My name is Chris Wood, and I was a hostage in the Discovery Channel building on September 1st, 2010.
It was the Wednesday before Labor Day.
Bright, sunny day with no clouds in the sky. I'm probably taking 2 or 3 steps into the lobby before I am confronted by the gunman. He had these cylinders, what looked to me like pipe bombs, and he is screaming at me, "Get on the floor, get on the floor."
I have a gun and I have a bomb. I have several bombs strapped to my body, ready to go off.
My initial worry was that we may be under attack.
There was 2,000 people in this building. What people were most concerned about was the fact that there was a daycare center.
If that dead man's trigger slips, it's going to tear apart this entire lobby. When I started working for Discovery, I was 24. I was living in Alexandria and commuting up to Silver Spring. I was really excited to get that job. It was really a dream job for me. The channel I was working in was TLC. My title was marketing coordinator. Discovery owns a lot of different channels. At that time, I believe it was 13 channels. Some of the largest channels being Discovery Channel, TLC, as well as Science Channel, and then there were other smaller channels involved in that.
It was one of the leading nonfiction brands in the world. Everyone loves Shark Week. One of the leaders in creating environmental or sustainable content. I was executive vice president of corporate affairs. I was based in Silver Spring, Maryland. On the 5th floor, there was 2,000 employees at the building. Discovery had a wonderful culture, a very generous culture. And so we had an on-site daycare.
I started working at Discovery probably in 1999, and the role that I had at Discovery at that point involved overseeing all of the international legal programming. Discovery at that point, it still felt like a small company, still felt like we were all family, and it still felt like the mission was just really good programming.
It was a normal day. It was the Wednesday before Labor Day in 2010.
September 1st was a really bright, sunny day with no clouds in the sky. We had some meetings that morning. I ended up going and grabbing a bite to eat while calling Mark, and I was talking to him because he was on his lunch break as well. I had been with Mark, my partner, for a couple years.
Mark's more of an introvert. Chris is very much an extrovert. I think they balance each other very well. They're a great couple.
When I was walking back, I was getting to those double doors. I said, "I love you," and he didn't say it and hung up. And so I hung up as well. We had just kind of gotten back together, and I was thinking about the fact that he didn't say "I love you" a lot. There was a lot that we still needed to figure out. I walked through the first door. In the main lobby is a huge space, big reception desk. I remember I saw someone laying on the floor, and I was like, "That's weird." So I continued into the second door and got halfway through that action of opening the door, and I noticed it was Jim, who is my coworker, who works on the creative side of marketing. And I was like, "Why is he on the floor? What is going on?" I mean, I'm probably taking 2 or 3 steps into the lobby at this point before I am confronted by the gunman. And he is in a green jumpsuit, almost like, a military leader around the world, where, dictator almost. Around his person was a vest, and he had these cylinders. They were propane cylinders, 2 on the front and 2 on the back. And attached to them were what looked to me like pipe bombs. And he is screaming at me, "Get on the floor, get on the floor." I remember in that moment where I was looking at Jim and looking up at him, I remember staring at him, and I'm staring down the barrel of a handgun. I just remember being extremely scared, looking at, how am I going to get out of here? What is my opportunity to get out of here? This is a really bad situation.
911, what is the emergency?
Hi, there's a shooter in my work building at 1 Discovery Place. There's a gunman.
I was the chief of police in Montgomery County. I remember that day, a man that come into the Discovery Building headquarters in Silver Spring, and that he's holding hostages. He comes in, he takes out a vest, puts the vest on, that has the bomb on, and then he takes out a firearm and shoots it into the air. He says, "Nobody move," and with that, everybody moved. Now, the security guard who was at the desk remained there, so he was the first hostage. 2 more individuals walk in the door, and he immediately trains the gun on them. He told them to get down at gunpoint.
I was the senior executive on location. I was in my office having a meeting when our head of internal communications rushed into my office and said, "It seems like there's been gunshots in the lobby." She and I went to the elevator bank to go down into the lobby to see what happened, and we started to talk then that if it was a gunshot, what would we do? They had 2 big glass doors that opened up into the lobby, and we could see the perpetrator there with our own eyes. And we were scared. We maybe got 10, 15 feet to the door of the lobby, and then quickly walked back when we knew that this actually was a serious situation.
The security guard was behind or right around the desk. Jim was laying down, obviously, when I came in, and I was laying down. I could see his feet, but I couldn't see, like, his face, his hands. I couldn't, just because we were kind of right in line with each other. And I was really focused more on the suicide bomber, and to make sure I knew exactly what he was doing and where he was at all times.
At that time, when we made visual contact of the perpetrator, we saw a large man in flip-flops and a t-shirt and baggy shorts and a gun coming towards the building.
2 suspects. The other one was a black male with a machine gun. Right now, possible 2 suspects.
And so we instantly thought there was a second shooter. My initial worry was we may be under attack.
Need to find out where the information's coming from about a second subject.
Whenever you have a call like that, it's always so chaotic that the initial information that you have is typically not very accurate. People say, well, we saw a guy, and I don't know if they were with him or not.
As it turned out, there was an undercover police officer who was working out at a gym when they got the first notification that there was a situation at Discovery, and he jumped in his car, still in his gym clothes, and ran to the scene.
Ed Payton was his name. Ed worked that area normally. Not only did he know the area, but he knew the building. Officer Payden proved to be invaluable with this call when he was able to get in without being seen. He got in and was able to snake through the building to get to the security office where they had cameras. He was able to get into that building and actually get the camera feed of the lobby, and he could see the hostages, he could see the individual who had come into the building. He is a hero, he is a courageous man, he is a great cop.
I was working from home. I was actually calling into the meeting on a conference call. Right before the meeting started. I remember hearing alarms start going off in the building that we had never heard before.
I was down on the first floor, and we had a little cafeteria that was in between the lobby and the daycare center, and that became sort of our makeshift command center.
When I got there, the evacuation was just beginning.
Units evacuating the building, half the evacuating citizens go out on the Colesville side headed to the metro.
There really was, 2,000 people in this building. But what people were most concerned about was the fact that there was a daycare center with children.
We had 100 children there. Our first responsibility was to get the kids out. And that, I think, was the most, you can see emotional, but scary piece.
When Ed got into the building, he was feeding us information over the radio. The daycare center was on the same floor or close to the lobby. Everybody's thinking, gosh, if this individual goes further into the building, what if he finds the daycare center?
They didn't have an exit from the daycare center, so the kids were going to have to come out and go out the main back door. And imagine if you were a parent and your kid was in the daycare and you didn't know what was going to happen. And so we had to get the kids out first.
I remember the adrenaline was just firing through me. I was most certainly shaking. Jim's still down and he's moving. There's the security guard. I recognized him. I was listening very carefully to what was being said and everything in the room, keeping my eye on James Lee. I just remember thinking, like, anything I can do to let somebody know that I am in here would be the best thing for me, but also possibly the other hostages.
Very early on, we started the evacuation out of the back of the building. Just that vision of these little children and strollers and being pushed down the sidewalk, it was very chilling.
But it was really the iconic pictures of the whole day was the staff pushing the children in the cribs across what was Colesville Avenue into the McDonald's. For me, once the last kid left, the weight of the world left my shoulders. The kids were safe. The kids were safe.
And the fire marshal, he was the bomb expert. We were able to use cameras to zoom in on the device, and he said, yes, that appears to be a real bomb. It appears that he's got what they call a dead man switch in his hand, the kind of switch that if you let it go, the bomb goes off. If it went off, it would certainly kill or injure the people around the individual wearing it.
It could literally take down this half of the building if properly designed. I'm probably 25 feet away from that desk. So about 15 feet away from the door. Your mind almost goes blank in those spaces, and you're just really in that fight or flight mode. I had my cell phone and then my BlackBerry. I remember moving the BlackBerry to my left hand, so kind of over my head, I'm face first. I didn't want to lose the ability to have that in my hand, so I was trying to be very careful. I'm looking at the gunman and suicide bomber because I didn't want it to be taken away. That was literally the only thing that I could control in that moment was that device. That was my only option to be able to communicate with the outside world.
I remember he had a shopping cart full of clothes and kind of empty bottles and papers. He had a green jacket on.
We didn't know who he was. We didn't know his association with Discovery Channel. Didn't know anything about him. It was when the folks from Discovery said, hey, this is we think this is the guy, and they had that flyer with his picture on it. And at that point, we started tying things together.
302, our subject's name is James J. Lee. He was here in 2008 for an incident that occurred on the property.
Mr. Lee had protested, demonstrated at the Discovery Building previously.
He had been charged with littering and disorderly conduct, had been placed on probation. Part of the order was don't go near the Discovery Building.
As coincidence would have it, the officer that put the handcuffs on Mr. Lee a year earlier was Ed Payton. It's Ed Payton who's got Mr. Lee by the handcuffs, behind his back, and is walking him away from the scene.
He had a manifesto, and it was about climate change and overpopulation.
What Mr. Lee believed is that there's too many people on the planet, we are using too many resources, we weren't taking care of the environment.
And he felt like the Discovery Channel was not doing anything to fight that.
They can communicate with so many people, not only locally or in the United States, but internationally.
His demands were that Discovery change their programming and put shows on that shine the light on overpopulation in the world.
There's also a kind of cruel irony in that he was attacking Discovery and Discovery Channel because there's no one who's dedicated more to covering the planet and these issues than us.
Stop showing those shows on Discovery Health and TLC about people having disgusting children, all right?
Looking back on it, our programming was definitely moving towards more reality TV based. John and Kate +8 and other shows that had like large extended families. There was kind of this acknowledgement that we weren't the same Discovery brand that we had been in the past.
I had been on the floor, which seemed like an absolute eternity, listening to the guy scream, James Lee, scream at people. There was some communication going on. He was either using the bullhorn, telling people to stay away, I have a bomb. I'm not quite sure when the NBC producer called. I just remember being extremely scared.
Then NBC News producer called the Discovery Channel general number. Suddenly, Lee himself picked up the phone.
No one has been shot. Do you have a gun? I have a gun, and I have a bomb. I have several bombs strapped to my body, ready to go off. I have a device that if I drop it, I'll explode.
And we're following breaking developments out of Silver Spring, Maryland. This is just outside the District of Columbia. Police are responding to reports of a man inside the Discovery Channel. The man has a gun, possible explosives.
When I started watching the news and realized this was happening at Discovery, it's when I started texting Chris.
My phone started buzzing a lot. First, it was definitely emails. I could definitely feel the difference in the vibration, but then text started coming in. One of the very first text messages I had was from Carlos, who worked for Discovery and was not in the building that day. It was something along the lines of, there's someone in the lobby that's taken hostages. My response to him was, I'm being held hostage in the lobby. And he responded, OMG, Chris, please stay safe. My next text back was, please tell Mark I love him.
It was surreal. When I get a text back from him saying, like, tell Mark I love him, there was no way to misinterpret that in terms of what was happening. Like, it didn't feel real.
In that moment, it was just recognizing that this person had taken all control away from me. It was the first time that I didn't feel in control of my life. And that is a horrific feeling. It's where things really started to set in for me, that this was real. I started really thinking about the end.
The darkest part of that afternoon, I think, really is when Chris sent that text. We all were forced to kind of acknowledge that Chris himself was not sure he was going to make it out of this.
I've been a negotiator at this point in time for about 10 or 15 years. So that was the most congested and chaotic scene I've ever been on. You had FBI, ATF. Once they found out it had maybe a fanatical or a terrorist tone to it, all the federal agencies responded.
The entire national security apparatus was there. There must have been 50 to 100 SWAT cars, fire trucks, police cars. I mean, it was a militarized zone very, very quickly.
I get on the scene and say, what can I do to help? And I just start going down a list of numbers that they give me to call. First call, I don't think I got through. But the second call, this guy's screaming at me.
Don't hold me, man. I know what you're trying to do. Don't hold me.
And the more he spoke, then I realized I'm actually talking to Mr. Lee. And then I became the lead negotiator.
What I want is for this channel, this company, to stop having shows about babies, having our children, and the TLC crap. And I want them to start talking about how to live with our children and baby sterilization.
But what about the poor people that you have in the lobby? Look what you're putting them through. Why don't you let them go?
Nothing to me, all right?
But they have families. They have loved ones.
I don't give it.
One of the strategies that we use is to humanize the hostages.
You got to give the hostages, I don't like to call them hostages, but you got to give them value. Sometimes you're hoping that morality kind of starts coming into them a little bit.
A negotiator said one of these guys has children. Well, immediately, Mr. Lee turns his attention to the hostage who's got the children, and he's hollering at him about oh, you brought 2 kids into this world. He said, what, you need somebody to love you? Is that it?
He absolutely lost it.
I want them to stop having families. This guy has 2 kids over here, for crying out loud. Who told him to have kids?
Mr. Lee, he thinks overpopulation. I mean, that's the biggest problem.
He thought that the mere fact that he had children, he was contributing to the parasites of this world. He just went off in another, and he threatened to kill himself, he threatened to kill them.
Well, I don't care about their families. Well, all I care about is what I asked for. So don't tell me that. I have no sympathy.
So I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Classic tactic we use, absolutely backfired on me now.
This ain't this. People will get hurt, all right? And the whole world will see it.
I don't know about how many employees are still there, how many have been out of the building.
This was something that was still dynamic. They were tense. We were tense. We were concerned about the safety of the 3 people in that lobby that were being held by Mr. Lee.
He's an Asian male, and his concerns are with the Discovery Corporation right now.
When we're into that hour, we are deep into negotiations. He was just agitated all the time. He is holding a dead man's trigger, like pulling a pin in and out of it.
It's going to cost us all our lives, and these people will join me in death.
It was a little while after I had stopped texting. He demanded that I get up. He said, "You near the door, get up and come over here." Like, he was always barking, yelling. I walked up to the desk, and he had also pulled Jim up. He starts interrogating Jim and myself. He starts asking, "What do you do? What do you do here? What do you do for Discovery?" The area that I was specifically working in was TLC. I just remember thinking in my mind that to tell him what I did would be dangerous. He was upset with Discovery's programming. TLC specifically, agitating him was just going to make this situation worse. So I literally told him I was an administrative assistant. I file papers. There was a succession of questions like that, but the majority of the time I lied. In that moment, all I cared about was Mark. I was really mad that this is where I was at. And I was thinking about the fact that he didn't say I love you a lot. And that was like one of those things that has stuck with me forever. I'm very intentional about the words that I say because it may very well be my last. We had gone through the questioning, and he's like, I'm bored of you. Go lay down. I don't know what that was, but then we're probably about 8 feet or so away from the desk.
Just laid the one hostage down on the ground.
Copy, laid a hostage down at 1443.
I've been able to look at the device a lot closer. I had been able to see the wires going from the pipes, almost like you would use for gas lines. They were metal. They had a wire going into them.
Your sole purpose of going to the Discovery Channel was for people to listen to you, right?
The sole purpose is to get my way or die.
His demands didn't make any sense, and the ability for him to achieve his demands was going to be slim. My body started shaking. I remember being almost numb, my arms being numb. I remember crying as quietly as I could, tears streaming down my face, pooling on the marble floor, already freezing cold. And in my mind, that is where I started to close my life.
When somebody's holding a dead man switch in their hand and they're strapped with a bomb vest on and he has a gun, all these avenues are there just for the sole purpose of killing people and killing himself. So Everything we said or did was just magnified 100-fold. It's still as volatile as it is when we started. But in my world, I just realized I'm there for the long haul. How long it takes, I'm just going to be there for you.
Move as far away from the building as you can.
People evacuated. There were a couple of exits that were on the opposite end of the building from where all all this was going on.
I was very thankful that we could get that many people out. And I think mostly it was discovery, self-evacuating.
I was the last person to leave the building. David Zasloff was our Chief Executive Officer and President of Discovery Communications. Zasloff said to me, I don't think I've ever said this to you, but I'm going to give you a direct order. You get the f out of that building right now. And I looked at the building and I said a little prayer to myself. I hope this ends well. You know, I looked to God to say, protect us.
I want to get the 3 individuals that are held hostage, I want them to get out safe. So you're really thinking, okay, it's really me. I got to get this thing resolved. As a negotiator, sometimes it's mano a mano. It's just you and I, we're talking. What made it so difficult as a negotiator, he constantly kept telling us he wanted to die.
No.
Yeah, get my way or I'm going to die today.
You're trying to kill yourself. It's not going to get the message out. And
it sure will.
No.
It sure will.
He would limiting his value. So that made the negotiations intense because he's just willing to die for his cause.
At some point, he demands that we get up again and that we approach the desk.
All units on traffic, no matter what happens, hold the perimeter.
When we were standing, we could hear movement. We could hear, at one point we heard like a click. I knew at that point that there was people back there. I assumed it was probably SWAT.
As quickly as we could, we got the SWAT team in a room. They came up in through the back, and they were able to get in a position so that if Mr. Lee had decided he was going to go toward the elevators, they would have been able to stop him from doing that.
He is like getting angry and like bouncing the thing on his leg. That just freaked me out, watching him hit that against there. And then he was putting the pin in and out of the dead man's trigger.
The incident commander told the SWAT team if he puts that pin back in, which would mean that the bomb would not go off, basically we're going to give the green light. We're going to take him out.
In those moments, my mind definitely shifted, and starting to realize that this is just not going the way that it should be going. Now being so close, I was just starting to think through if that dead man's trigger slips, if he makes a mistake, the wires are faulty. It's gonna go off. It's gonna tear apart this entire reception desk, if not blow out every window in here. The shrapnel, is that going to rip through me? Is it gonna rip through Jim? Rip through the security guard? And I remember my mind starkly shifting to, I'm not done. That this is not going to be the end for me, and I'm not gonna let anybody dictate how I live my life.
Not only was Ed Payton feeding us information that he could see from the camera he was on, but the SWAT team was literally on the other side of the wall, so they could actually hear what was going on.
I remember looking over my shoulder a little bit, and I remember seeing a sniper there. In my mind, I started thinking, maybe we can run.
He would lean into the phone and actually look at the phone and talk to it. I may have got a note or something. You know, just keep him talking. He's really losing track of the environment. Just keep him going.
You're right. You have to blast me, all right? If you don't believe me, you can shoot me right now, and this will be over.
I start looking at Tom, who is the security guard. James Lee's getting highly agitated by this point. Jim looks at me, and I mouth the word, run. Jim nods yes.
The hostages were trying to communicate with one another. You could tell from the camera that they're putting numbers on, on the side of their arm.
I started counting down, and I dropped one. Dropped another one. James looked right at me, and I was panicked at that point. I thought he had maybe seen what I was doing. I thought he maybe was aware of what I was doing. As soon as he looked away, I kind of did that to, look at Jim. I took off running as fast as I possibly could. Jim, he ducked behind a pole. The security guard stepped back.
The SWAT officer, he gets ready to shoot. The hostage is right in the line of fire.
All of a sudden, I hear gunfire. Well, I'm thinking, oh my God, he's just shot the hostages. I thought I had failed. I thought they had been shot by Lee. And my heart I cannot tell you the doom that came over me. I mean, my heart just dropped. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that I had failed these guys. I just thought, oh my God.
I know that I heard screaming behind me. I just knew I busted through that door, hit that door so hard I'm surprised I didn't shatter the glass.
He's got this bomb on, he's got a firearm with him. The SWAT officer shoots him. He also had another pin that was up on his chest area. He would have had to pull that pin out to actually make the device detonate. And he starts fiddling for the pin that's on his chest. And one of the officers shot him again to stop him from doing that. Mr. Lee died at the scene.
Jim and I were sat like next to each other against a wall. I don't exactly remember where. My immediate thoughts in those moments were about my fellow hostages. There was a sense of relief that it was over. Honestly, I was shocked. I was shocked that I got out of there without any physical wounds.
And I go outside. Once the adrenaline just dropped, I fell to my knees. I just couldn't stay anymore. I just lost the feeling in my legs. I just dropped, just went to my knees. And I just closed my eyes for a few minutes and I went,
Let me just say on behalf of the company, thank you very much to law enforcement and Montgomery County Fire and Rescue.
I think there was a lot of heroism that day. The 3 hostages were so brave, so calm. I'm proud of Discovery Communications for how we handled it.
All 3 of the hostages were safe, and none of my cops were hurt. And I felt a tremendous sense of relief.
I remember sitting in the police station. I remember calling my mother and telling her that I was okay and that I was out, and she was very upset. I just remember her not wanting to get off the phone.
Hi. I'm in a debriefing room. I love you.
Someone told me that Carlos and Mark were there. I remember hugging him and crying a lot. And I remember saying to him, "You didn't say I love you. You did not say I love you," before he hung up. And he was like, "What?" And confused that that's what I would remember. Yeah, but I hugged him for a very long time. Mark and I got married on May 7, 2011, and it was a moment that I most certainly didn't think I would ever have the opportunity to have, based on what I had been through. And today we have 3 kids. Inside the lobby, I realized just how close I came to death. From that moment on, I always looked at this as my second chance.